Hello, everyone. We're back, Mary and I. This is our second podcast, and from the questions that were not related to the shade of Mary's lipstick, we understand that a lot of you are interested to hear from us about H&C applications and family sponsorship. So we try to combine it into one podcast. What makes this podcast interesting is that we're bringing two different perspectives of the story. I am a licensed immigration consultant, so obviously I'm on the immigration side of the things, bringing the expertise and working on the cases. Mary's role is a little different. She has been in the industry for 30 years now and brings decades of experience from inside the industry. Working alongside the immigration team, the employers, the clients, she's been watching how immigration changes lives and how immigration changes over time. So we are here to sit at the same table, so to speak, and to combine our stories, to combine our experiences, and to answer your questions, and hopefully to make your journey a little easier.
Thank you, Maria. I'm very proud of the introduction that I was hoping to get remembered the first time, but thank you anyway. I'd like to add that not only that it's important to look at immigration from the legal perspective, it's also important to remember that precisely this stream of agency applications, humanitarian and compassionate, as well as spousal sponsorships, that's a more life questions and hopefully answers. And this is where I come in. I obviously have decades of experience about humanitarian and compassionate matters, as well as spousal sponsorships, and of course my own life experience to share and see how my input can be of assistance to you who are here to package it in a legal manner and present it to the government once again. So we will be discussing often asked questions that keep coming up, as well as less often asked questions and questions that we help people to come up with, because that's a very important part of our job.
Often consultations regarding agency matters, I find myself sounding like a broken record explaining a concept that I like to repeat, and I think it's a very good visual of what agency is. So there's so much information out there of what is good for agency application, what is considered a negative factor. And I always say that a job of an officer looking at an agency application is that of a scale. So every factor of your story, every factor in an application is being weighed as either important, less important, or more important, and it's given a negative or a positive weight, and they're put on a scale. And in the end, it's the officer's job to weigh the entire case. Which way are they leaning towards? Is it approval or is it a refusal? So this constant weighing does not allow to answer one question taken outside of context. And there's a million of these questions that come up. And our job is to help our clients, hopefully within the first consultation, to explain this concept that let's review as many factors as possible, weigh them, and help try to see it the way an officer would. Look from their perspective.
Very often people come to us with a preconceived notion of what they need in order to establish the factors that will weigh in their favor. So they ask us questions like, I understand. Actually, they're more statements rather than questions, because the notion is so preconceived and they've heard so much from their friends and relatives and neighbors and the local supermarket clerk and their hairdressers. They know a lot of stuff, and everybody shares their experience. But altogether, it makes a very confusing picture in their heads. So they come up with a notion. More often than not, it's a negative notion how they do not qualify or what they lack in evidence in order to establish the fact that they are indeed the candidate for this kind of an application. And a more particular question is based on whether or not they must be a salaried employee, or can they be self-employed individuals, for example, Uber drivers, or I don't know, maybe actually somebody who's a nail technician or an esthetician working for somebody else. And here is where we come in, and we try to explain what is behind the criteria. What is the government actually looking for in the factors? It's not necessarily being on salary. It's about being of an asset to the Canadian economic system and to Canadian society as a whole.
One of popular questions is, it's actually a family will come in and sit in front of us. We know we do not qualify for anything because we're over 50. Unfortunately, that notion is circling.
I take that
somewhere
personally.
out
I don't like that. I don't like that question.
I don't agree with that approach at all. So under agency, there is no age requirement. There's no language requirement, which is a pro and con of the program at the same time. It's our job to present and put the best foot forward and explain. So just because an applicant or both husband and wife are over 50, they're still supporting themselves. They're both working. They are both learning English, and they have a long way before they're going to retire. They're supporting their 2 children. So the fact that they're 50 on its own, I don't even see it as a negative factor. If anything, they're mature. They're going to, they've invested into their life in Canada much more than a 30-year-old would. It's harder for them, so they're putting more effort into it, and it's our job to make it obvious.
Well, for sure, they're here to stay, and as far as I'm concerned, 50 is the new 30. So I think that people are very robust at that age. Somewhere in other countries where people try to immigrate to Canada from, 50 is considered quite an age. But they're not looking at the age per se. What the government is looking at actually is how long do you have before retirement? How long are you going to be an active member of the society and paying your taxes before you are able to collect the pension from the government? We need to understand, I think we need to understand that any government is a business, and the business has to function, and the business has responsibilities. The business has to be profitable, and it has to make sense. So this is what immigration is all about, as far as I am concerned. We don't always agree with the laws. We don't always agree and find it difficult to abide by the regulations, the ever-changing regulations, but we must respect it. And if we don't like it, we can go and change it. But while we have it, we must go with the flow, and this is what we try to explain to our clients, that we are following the rules and we are being as accommodating to both parties, meaning the client, the person who wishes to apply and live in Canada, and the Canadian government. So we're trying to be compliant from both sides. Keeping in mind the age factor, I would like to mention the fact that there is more than one factor and more than one reason, more than one profile of a candidate who can and will, and in my opinion, must apply under the H and C. The category had existed for years unfortunately, we started utilizing it, I would say profoundly utilizing it, for about 3 years now, in view of all the countries that are torn by the war. But I would like to have the opportunity to mention several other people and categories and reasons who are qualified to apply under humanitarian and compassionate factors.
So the agency category was not created for one of the most popular countries we are hearing and from our clients and out there for Ukraine. So agency was not created specifically for a category of people coming under COAIET program. It was not created for any other country. It was always there. It became heavily used for these countries because these countries are war-torn. So going back to who else can use the program, there's medical inadmissibility cases, which agency is the only program that can overcome that. There is, and we're going to touch on that a little bit later, medical inadmissibility cases. Please remind me what else we've used it.
Elders, vulnerable,
abused women when it doesn't qualify under refugee program. So there's quite a few factors where we rule out other programs first, and that's one of the most important factors of agency. You rule out everything else first. You show how it was the last resort.
Adult dependents with special needs.
Yes, thank you.
This is actually, this was our first special case that Maria and I did together, and it was approximately 15 years ago, I would say 14 or 15 years ago, where we took upon ourselves a very difficult and compelling and successful case that we did back then, because this category is very dear and personal to my heart. I felt that if we put in our very, very best, then nothing bad can come out of it. And of course, as it pertains to anything in life, this rule had worked in this situation. The person in question was not eligible to be included in an economic, if I remember correctly. Yeah. It wasn't even a humanitarian factor, which we used in an economic program. And it was successful. The person had passed everything. We had presented it properly with the assistance of very knowledgeable medical individuals, as well as lawyers who specialize in this kind of apparently and unfortunately a common issue that had arisen since 14 years ago, time over and over and over again. There are so many vulnerable people that have no way of getting here, and yet they are so necessary in any community, any country, and any government. Our job is to present it in the way that I had just described it. There are several factors that we utilize. We are happy to expand on that. If there is interest after this podcast, we are very happy to discuss it in more detail. Meanwhile, this was just one of the categories that we are continuously using under the humanitarian and compassionate category.
Speaking of which, with respect to consultations, we are very, very giving with our time. This has become our normal. This is actually something that you were kind of teaching me how to do at the beginning, because I had resistance against providing free consultations free of charge. So now we are at a point where we can choose. So as of now, we provide free consultations related to agency cases. Very happy to provide those, and we are very giving with our time. We are. It's never limited to a specific number of minutes. I never look at the clock myself, and I explain as much as I see fit in a particular with a particular client. I'll do as much comparison with other programs. Of course, that's the main job, is to explain how everything else has to be ruled out before we look at agency. So these consultations were a very good place to start.
And it gives us kind of an upper hand when people are starting to shop around and verify the information that they received from us. I think this is our moment to shine and to show, demonstrate our knowledge and our capability to be on the side of the client and kind of put yourself in their place and explain to them in the way that they need to receive it and utilize it in their decision-making process. And we are so grateful to have this opportunity. And of course, the consultation is free and charge as a little input on our side. I understand once again that people are looking around, and this is absolutely acceptable. And actually, we encourage very often after a consultation, we ask people to seek other consultants, lawyers, professionals, ask them the right questions. We actually do guide them. You need to ask the right question to receive the right answer. And we are happy to do that. Whether this is a good business practice or not, Maria and I are still not clear. We bounce back and forth, but it's irrelevant. What's relevant is that this is our business practice, and we are here to share it with you. We welcome anybody and everybody. And one more category of individuals who are welcome to approach us for humanitarian compassionate cases is, I'd like to mention two, actually. Two kind of individuals who come up with these questions is the elderly, who are left all alone in their country of origin because they're younger or older. Children had the opportunity to flee or to leave on their own, and there's nothing to do with. They don't see a way how to take their mother who's widowed, for example, or a father who is sick and cannot manage on his own. So we take cases like this as well, and then we take the people with different sexual orientation who cannot practice, who cannot be themselves. Let's say
live a
normal, healthy life in their country of origin, who is being persecuted. We will do an agency before we ever recommend for them to apply for refugee status, for protection under refugee status, because if they already are in Canada in legal status, under any legal status, whether it's be study permit or a work permit or a visitor record, we believe that we can relay their particular situation, and not only that, but the situation in their country of origin that does not offer protection for people who are different in that in that respect.
One of the factors, thinking about of choosing a program, one of the main factors that we always talk about is processing times. And RCIC has done something, if you ask me, is very underhanded when they updated the processing times to simply state over 10 years for agency applications without talking about it, without making an announcement. The good thing about it is we don't rely on their processing times. We have our internal statistics. We have enough cases to see what's happening. Are they currently processing first come, first serve? Are they prioritizing certain countries? What's happening in general? Like, we are watching waves of these things with agencies. and can always provide our internal statistics, which are significantly more reliable than processing, which switched from, I don't remember what it was before, like 3-4 years to 10 overnight. So what actually happened, if you remember, we saw all agency cases stuck. We weren't receiving case numbers, acknowledgement of receipts. We weren't receiving any approvals in principle. They were all stuck for 10 months. There was zero communication agency cases. And then we're seeing this update without being news. It was simply updated within system of 10 years in processing time. And then at the same time, they started giving acknowledgement of receipts and approvals in principle. So if anything, it was a trick to hold.
Clearing the pipeline.
Yes.
And discouraging people from applying.
And
it's an overwhelmed program.
I don't appreciate these kind of tactics. But like I said, we rely on our internal statistics, which are much more reliable.
Yes. So this is as far as humanitarian compassionate cases goes. We welcome questions about this particular category because it's very, at the moment, it's very on the spot, and everybody's talking about it. We understand. We do our own statistics, and we know how many people come to consult on that. Everybody is welcome to write or to call or to schedule interviews. We'll talk about your specific case. Once again, I'd like to remind you, don't look at the list of documents that you are required to produce and be discouraged if you don't have one or the other. We can definitely consult you. The good news, and it's not news, the good thing is about this program is that when you apply and your situation changes, you can always send in more clarifications, documentation, information if you want to strengthen your case. If anything changes and you feel that you need to inform the government in order to strengthen your case, you can do that because, yes, your application will take time to get to the stage when it's going to be looked at. So that's the good side of it is that you can do it. You can always strengthen it. Please do so. Please call us. Even if you had already applied and you would like to know more information about it, please call Maria on our Kanset website. You have this information. You can always write to us and ask us to discuss a specific topic about this specific category. And I'm not sure if we have time to discuss any more categories today.
I will briefly touch, just because at the beginning we promised that we were combining this with spousal sponsorship. With spousal sponsorships, I feel that it's more straightforward than agencies, but I feel very bad for people that are trying to simply make a decision and determination between understanding between common law and married couple. Of course, we know the definition, but what does it mean in terms of preparing documents, and what does it mean in terms of when do I qualify under one or the other? And two, one of the bigger decisions is inside Canada versus outside Canada, Canada applications. And of course, this is for those that have the privilege of being able to travel. And so much goes into this decision. The factors: what are your travel plans? Do you have do you absolutely need a work permit in Canada while your application is being processed, or is your priority getting to PR faster? You know, work permit not being that important. You still have a job at home, and you would prefer both as a couple. You make a decision. It's more important that we get PR faster. Kids and schools for dependent children. There's so much that goes into that strategy from the get-go. I feel very bad for people that are reading everything online and trying to make sense out of these things. As a minimum, if you're planning to do this application yourself, as a minimum, get a consultation to get these answers before you go in to the process that's going to set you years behind if you started with the wrong strategy at the beginning. So consultation in this case is a must.
So I'd like to just clarify that it's not only a matter of whether to go as a spousal sponsorship or a common law sponsorship, But it's also very important to understand the difference between an inland sponsorship application and what's called a regular sponsorship application outside of Canada, what it means to you, as Maria said, whether you need a work permit, whether you need to travel. What does it mean? Are we taking for granted the inland spousal sponsorship? Because we shouldn't take it for granted. It's an exemption. We're asking for the government to allow us to remain together, us meaning husband and wife, in Canada while this processing is taking place. So that's something that the client needs to understand, that do not take it for granted. And if you want to travel and if you don't want to explain yourself, if you need to travel, and then of course the best way to do is outside of Canada. It doesn't mean that you need to be outside of Canada. It needs to, your application goes in an embassy or in the consulate outside of Canada, just like any application to come to Canada. When you're asking for an inland sponsorship, you're saying we cannot be apart. We need to be together. We need to offer these reasons. You cannot just assume that you will be allowed to do that inside of Canada. And from there, we try to figure out whether you're eligible to receive an open work permit or not, whether the children are eligible to go to school, and whether or not you could actually travel. And as Maria said, a lot depends on your particular circumstances. Call us, write to us. We will tell you the truth.
On that note, our plan for next podcast is talking about how to choose an immigration company, how to choose a consultant, the right questions to ask. Oftentimes, I will, for clients that are coming in and are not asking questions, I will tell them, you should ask me this. Setting up expectations and simply knowing who to trust. We're planning to expand on that unless more questions come up and we decide to talk about something else. So please comment, please give us your questions, and we're happy to talk about what's on your mind. Thank you.
Thank you.